So it appears as if all charges coming from Chicago's prosecutors have been dropped against Jussie Smollett. Now, what we don't know in this situation is if federal charges will also be dropped. He was also going to be looked at in federal prosecutors because of him sending himself a letter with white powder on it, which would be a federal hoax and carries a large sentence if he would be convicted of that. We don't know if those charges are going to be dropped, and we don't really know the reason why the charges were dropped. But I did watch Smollett's press conference where his lawyer and then he talked to members of the press, and I think we got some information out of that. So I wanted to talk a little about what's going on. Now, the implication that Smollett and his lawyer are trying to say is he was totally innocent. This exonerates him from everything, and it wasn't a hoax or anything like that in the first place. My interpretation is based on looking at what they said in the press conference, if what they say is true, which you'll see what I mean by that, that I actually think that this doesn't show that Smollett was innocent. It shows that something shady's going on. So let's go through the points I have. The first thing that Smollett's lawyer said was Smollett was out on a bond. I think it was a $10,000 bond, and he actually forfeited that bond money to the city of Chicago in order for these charges to be dropped. Now, that seems like if you were an innocent person that was interested in protecting your name, you wouldn't give money, refuse to take this money back. I would say, I'm going to take it to court. I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. It's clear that the prosecutor's coming to me knows that I'm innocent. So if you're innocent, why would you have to give up any money whatsoever? That seems ridiculous. It seems like that this was contingent on possibly having the charges dropped to just go ahead and forfeit that bond. Now, this brings us to the second point. That's not definitive, of course. You could just say I want it over with. But it brings me to the second point. The lawyer for Smollett said that the prosecutor stressed, and that Smollett's lawyer wanted this to be made clear, that Smollett was a great member of the community and had great community service from the age he was 15, serving the community of Chicago, plus doing things like fighting for LGBT rights and things like that. He was an upstanding member of the community, and that affected the decision in order to allow these charges to be dropped. This makes no sense to me if he was actually innocent. If you're innocent of a crime and the prosecutors are coming to you saying, we're sorry, we've now looked into this and realized we don't have enough evidence to charge you with a crime, they're not going to say, oh, and your good behavior in the past factored into that. You could be a drunken layabout that's never done anything good for the community, but if the prosecutor says, wow, you didn't commit the crimes that you were charged for, they're going to let you go. They're not going to bring up your past or your community service as a reason for doing that. The only reason that prosecutors, in my mind, would bring up his past community service and things like that are to show, well, we think that it's most likely that there's evidence here to push forth with a trial for this or to push forth with these charges, but in lieu of good behavior, we're offering leniency. Which would mean that, yes, maybe he did make this whole story up, but he's been really great in the past, so we're going to let things go. That still doesn't speak to Smollett being innocent of the charges that were levied at him. Now, the third thing. This is something that a lot of people are getting confused because one of the questions then is, okay, well, if Smollett's contention that he didn't make any of this up, then isn't he right back where he initially started saying that he fears that there are these bigots trolling the streets of Chicago and they're going to beat up black men and gay men? And his lawyer specifically says, no, they do take police at their word that it was these two Nigerian associates of Smollett that actually were the perpetrators of this crime. In other words, Smollett's contention is, yes, it was my associates that beat me up, but I didn't pay them to do it, and I wasn't part of a hoax having them beat me up intentionally. He even says he swears on his mother. He's basically swearing on his mother's name. He wouldn't be his mother's son if he had the capability to make something up like this. Well, that seems ridiculous. He talks specifically, remember, he says that he didn't lie in any aspect of this scenario. From day one, he never told anything that was untruthful on his mother's name. But he at least lied by omission, if not outright lying. Now, it was hard to pin down exactly what his description were in media places of his attackers. He certainly said they wore MAGA hats, and he said what they basically made homophobic and racial slurs to him. So I don't know if he specifically said they were white or not, but he allowed the media to report that they were white supremacists, and he never corrected them. And some of the very outlets that he was being interviewed on that had reported this as white supremacists. You would think that he would have done his due diligence when being interviewed to say, I have no proof what skin color they were. But he didn't. So that's at least a lie by omission, and he probably came out, I can't definitively show based on my limited research whether he ever identified them as white or not. But if he did, that's a clear lie. Because I'm not trying to disparage the people that supposedly attacked him, but they're very dark. You wouldn't mistake them for white people. They weren't just like a light-skinned African-American. They were very dark. So there wouldn't be a mistake made like that. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was he kind of self-righteously says at the end of his press conference, he'll continue to fight for marginalized communities like the LGBTQ community. Well, this is kind of outrageous because if he knows, as he's admitting, that it actually wasn't a hate crime, this actually wasn't committed by MAGA supporters, this actually wasn't committed by homophobes, it wasn't committed by white people, it was committed by associates of his that happened to be black people that he got along with seemingly until this event, then why would he still be out there making this seem like, oh, and I'm nobly fighting for LGBT causes and things like that? Shouldn't he have taken this time to say, and look, even though this wasn't a hoax, I'm sorry that innocent people got smeared. I'm sorry that Trump supporters got smeared, or that white people got smeared by this. But no, instead he wants to keep up the cultural Marxism and the division. Now that's if we believe his version. I don't believe it. I think when we see the preponderance of evidence, particularly the fact that he wrote this check to these people, that it was his associates that committed this crime, that there was so much shadiness that went on with it, including maybe sending himself the note, the sandwich not being damaged, leaving the noose on himself, just all the things we now know about the story that didn't add up, and the fact that the police thought there was enough to charge him. I think that the most likely scenario is he is guilty, that it was a hoax, and either one of two things happened. Either the police botched the investigation by doing something technically not on the up and up with evidence or interviews or something of that case, and so the prosecutor felt the need to just brush the case aside so the police didn't look bad. I tend to think that's not the case, particularly because Smollett and his lawyer threw the Chicago police under the bus, and the prosecutors had to know that this would happen. They had to know that if these charges were dropped, that the police that came out so firmly about how outrageous it was that Smollett committed this hoax were going to look really terrible, and that Smollett was going to use this as a platform to say, yeah, the police were wrong, they did something really bad. So I don't think that's the case. I think the second case is most likely. We know people, for example, we know that the head prosecutor supposedly was going to recuse herself because she had such strong connections to this. We know that the Chicago police wanted an investigation or wanted to make it clear that this prosecutor, who was a friend of Obama's, was trying to get this handled by people that were friends of Obama at the national level. And so there was definitely politics going on here. And this is a really bad look for the Democrats that push kind of this progressive cultural Marxist narrative. That they bought this lie, hook, line, and sinker. So particularly in a day like today, after such bad news for the establishment Democrats, this is something that could take it away and distract from that. See, there are real racists out there. The country is as racist as we thought. It is as homophobic as we thought. Smollett didn't commit some sort of hoax. We were right to think that he's a hero. And it's outrageous. The preponderance of the evidence suggests that that's not the case whatsoever. So I look forward to seeing more information on this. I really want to hear what the Chicago police has to say, what their representative is going to say about basically being thrown under the bus here. And I'm interested to see if the federal charges are going to be dropped as well, or if they're going to continue with them. So, hey, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll be putting some more material out daily, and have a good one.